All right. Hello. Welcome. Make yourself comfortable as much as you can, and if you can, make sure that the people around you are also comfy, like maybe share pillows or drinks or something. Welcome to this evening and to the Casino for Social Medicine. My name is Magda. I'm one of the many people who run this place, and I'm just gonna quickly tell you about what the casino is, and then do our intro when we look at the news of the world, and then we will have a little kind of somatic introduction. I should be allowed somatic introduction from Cassie Thornton from by the whiteboard, and then we will get into the talk. And depending on how we are doing, we will have a pee break in the middle. But I would encourage everyone to just pee whenever the heck they need to. You can just climb over the people. It's fine. Don't hold your pee. It's not good for you. Thank you. I love imparting wisdoms. The Casino for Social Medicine looks like a cafe or a bar, but it's actually kind of an experiment in mutual aid. We try here to train for the world outside and to be able to become useful in all kinds of different ways, and try to find the thing that is between making art and making activism that is neither one of those things, but it's something else. And it's all a volunteer-run place. The people that you might see behind the front desk and behind the bar and all of us. We are just here trying our best. If you want to become a member and become part of the casino, there is a way. And you can talk to somebody behind the front desk, whoever is there, probably Florence, about how to do that. And you can also support us with money because we love being able to pay rent. And one practical thing, the only information that you really need to know about the casino is that you cannot throw the toilet paper into the toilet, thank you. Because really, the place floods, then the pump catches on fire, it's a whole thing, but it will definitely mean that we would have to close. So that is important. The rest, give or take. And we open every evening here with a thing that we call 3x3x3, because we want the casino to be a place where we don't hide from what is happening in the world, but maybe we can digest it together. And so we read 3 news from the world, and 3 news from the resistance, and then 3 things that you could do this week in Berlin to plug into collective organizing in any way. So 3x3x3. 3 news from the world. On Friday, the new Minister of the Interior, Alexander Debord from CSU, reiterated that border controls, more ejection, asylum denial, more deportations, and the difficulty of naturalization of migrants ensure more security. Palestine. As announced, Israel is escalating its war on Gaza, killing hundreds of Palestinians over the weekend, including at least 5 journalists. On Sunday, Israeli warplanes bombed a tent camp housing displaced people, killing at least 160 Palestinians. The US. US Supreme Court Justice heard oral arguments on Thursday in a case stemming from Trump's currently stalled efforts to end birthright citizenship. The Trump administration is challenging whether federal justices can issue universal or nationwide injunctions against his order. 3 news from the resistance. Tens of thousands of protesters turned out on May 15th to observe the 77th anniversary of the Nakba, the expulsion of 700,000 Palestinians from their homes following the establishment of Israel in 1948. The Nottoway Plantation, Louisiana, a luxury resort and tourist destination, burned to the ground. The plantation was built by enslaved people in 1859 as a living quarters and command center of a sugar plantation, and was briefly in business as a museum. Many speculate that the fire was ancestrally supported. And Twice in the past 3 weeks, US Navy fighter jets have plummeted into the sea instead of landing on or remaining docked on the carrier vessel USS Harry Truman. The humans have survived, but the acts of fighter jet suicide are moving solidarity gestures. And 3 ways that things you can do this week. There is a Gaza Championship, a mutual aid network connecting with people in need of direct support, and we can hook you up with the website on how to support people in Gaza directly. That's kind of ongoing, but you can do it this week. On Saturday, May 24th, today, there was Central American Market at Offline, which was a migrant-led project with a lot of entrepreneurs, artists, and makers. And tomorrow, on Sunday, May 15th, there will be a day of Haiti culture at Spore. And there's going to be a lot of programming about the world's first free Black republic, which is Haiti. So that's it. Thank you. And do you hear me well? Is this a good? Awesome. Thank you. You might need a microphone.
Do you think it will? Well, can we also just test the music real quick? It was on. I think it's on Bluetooth.
Yeah. Playing some. You buzzed it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Ooh, there we go. Hey everybody. I'm Cassie. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so nervous because I knew a lot of people would come. Alexis is awesome. The ideas are so cool that we're here for. I had no mental picture of this many people being here. Wow. Okay. So I'm gonna make a drawing because I think it's gonna help. Would you hold my phone? Sure. Thank you. Okay. So I wanted us to just hallucinate a little bit before we hear Alexis talk. I don't know about any of you, but I feel like I live in 2 dimensions at the same time. And the first one, it feels like it's sort of losing force every day. It's the dimension where we drink flat whites and do a lot of very intense yoga so that we can keep going to work and paying rent. It's the dimension where, I don't know, it sort of feels a little bit like what I imagined life would be like a couple of years ago. Like sometimes I'm trying to figure out like if I should get my PhD. But that dimension feels like it's really changing over time, or it's losing steam. I'm just gonna draw it really quick. I call this dimension the flat white dimension. And I've been writing and thinking about it for a couple of years. And I knew it was sort of going down, but I always felt that as if that wasn't really the complete story. There was definitely at least one more dimension, probably a lot more. But I've been thinking a lot about how there's this other dimension that's like underneath it, but is it really underneath it? I'm not sure. But it's definitely gaining force. And I call this the demons coming out of the sidewalk dimension. And this is like everything that's been repressed in order to preserve empire. And it's coming out, and the return of the repressed is not a bad thing, but it doesn't really bode well for the flat white dimension.
When you visualize it.
Yeah. And I used to feel a lot of shame about this, like about being in the flat white dimension. Now I just feel rage. And I think that in the flat white dimension, and by the way, the flat white dimension is not a place where only white people are, but it has more to do with the flat white and whiteness itself. But I think inside of the flat white dimension, we were taught that we have no power, that we're alone, that we can't think, and that we can only rely on experts. and that we're bad and it's our fault. But those things, I think, have been imposed on us. And I think there's really an amazing moment that we're going through, a big change, and we're going through it together and separately. And we need to figure out what it means to think now. And I think Alexis is here as an amazing example of someone that can really help us think. And I'm so excited about that. I just wanted to add one more little piece of this, which is that I think that the mainstream capitalism, colonialism profits off of us losing our minds. And they're literally the investments, they're all in pharmaceuticals and in AI and not in people. But I think we are more like octopuses than we think, which means like we think with our bodies. And so I want to help us think a little bit with our bodies before Alexis helps us think as a social body. Okay, so I'm going to do 3 separate exercises. We're going to use our bodies as we also do a visualization. We're going to imagine that we're looking at a wall, and we're going to go through the wall. I don't know what your wall is made of, but on the other side is a type of ungovernability. I want you to just feel, you don't have to think yet, what does it mean to become ungovernable by corporations and big tech and far-right governments? We're going to go through a wall and find out what's on the other side. And we're going to listen to a little song, 3 songs, by a little group from a place where Alexis is also from, called Ottawa. And so we're going to listen to A Tribe Called Red, which is also called Hallucination, which is, they play electro powwow. And we're going to listen to that as we go through these 3 walls. I'm sorry, not go through the 3 walls, but do 3 exercises. So you're going to want to, thank you so much. Okay, you're going to want to have space in front of you because you're going to use your hands to kind of go forward. So try not, you're going through the wall but not through other people. So you might have to be like sort of subtle. Okay, wait, can I give you this one more? Wait, can we do like, so I take like a whole team. So the first exercise is we're gonna, the whole time we're gonna be breathing through our mouth, like.
Cassie, can you speak into the mic?
Oh, sorry.
I think we can hear it.
The whole time we're gonna be breathing through our mouths. So it's gonna be like a cannonball breath, like. I know, it's crazy. And then we're gonna inhale as our hands are open and exhale into fists. So it's gonna be like. You can just start it. Can we put the music on? We're listening to a song called Land Back, since that's what we're really ultimately dealing with. Close your eyes. We're going to do it for about 1 minute. 'Cause I want you to imagine, as you're opening your hands, you're touching the wall, so you're starting to feel what the wall's made of. 30 seconds left. Ten seconds left. And inhale. And hold and squeeze your whole body with fists. Inhale a little bit more. Hold. And then exhale. And release. just chill on that for a second. So the next one, we're gonna be pushing up against the wall and sort of feeling what it's like when you use your weight against the wall. Like, does it budge, or like what does it do to your body, and what does it do to the wall when you move against it? And so I'm going to show you. It's like. So this is going to be the one where you gotta kind of watch out for your friends. But you're really sort of trying to understand with your body what the wall is made of. Actually, let's just start. So, eyes closed if you can. Try to understand the impact of the wall on your body and your body on the wall. Five, four, three, two, one. And inhale, one hand forward, one is back. Inhale and hold. And tense your face and tense your body. And 3, 2, 1, exhale. And now switch hands. Take a big inhale. And hold and squeeze. And exhale and let go. Okay, got one more. And this is the best one, because you're scooping your way through the wall. You're really gonna understand what's inside of the wall, and by the end, you're gonna know what's on the other side of the wall. So it's gonna look like this. So you're like scooping through it, and it goes with the same breath. So you're like, we're gonna listen to the best song. We're gonna listen to the best song now. Not that the other ones aren't also the best. So go ahead and start. We need it probably as loud as possible. Without hitting. 10 seconds left. You might be getting through right now. Let's see. Now inhale your hands up with your palms open. And inhale, inhale, inhale as much as you can, and hold and squeeze your whole body. And hold. We're going to try to hold it for 30 seconds. Take in a little bit more air if you need to. It's a whole nervous system reset thing happening, which is great. We're unplugging from the global economy. And 3, 2, 1. And kind of let yourself go. With your eyes closed, I wonder if you can explore what's on the other side of the wall, or anything else that you might have learned. I was thinking that the funny thing about becoming ungovernable in the eyes of corporations and big tech and far-right governments is so much about being together and not becoming atomized. It might be so much simpler than we think. I want to officially welcome Alexis, and I think of them as a philosopher and a teacher and an activist. On one side, we could say that they look at complicity and contamination and colonialism and whiteness, but on the other side, it's so much about continuing and kin and collaboration and cooperation, non-coercive cooperation, commiseration and care. And we're so lucky to have you.
Cassie, for opening like that. And thank you everyone here at Casino for hosting us and for having this space. I brought handouts. I thought there might be 20 people. I'll make 10 and they can share. So I'll pass these around. But if you have your tiny device that connects to the global internet, this is also on my website, and you're welcome to look at it. There's two things there. One is a set of quotes, which is what this handout is, and one is the full chapter, which I'm not going to read from tonight. So my website is alexisshotwell.com. It's embarrassing. And at the bottom of it, there's a little search window, and if you type in ongoingness, then you'll get to this. Or probably if you search casino, it'll also come up along with the writing workshop that I did here yesterday. So what we thought is that I would just talk a little bit for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then Magda and I will be in conversation a little, and then we'll have space for all of us to bring ourselves in to the room and say things, ask things, share things. And I want to really emphasize that it's important as you're here to be, as I say a lot, not existing in a relation of domination over yourself. So when we say no gods, no masters, we mean also we're not trying to have a little master in our head that we're mean to ourselves. So in this space, which can be sensorily overwhelming because there are so many of us, please really take seriously that permission to move as you need to, and to go pee, not throwing the toilet paper in the toilet, and to leave and come back, and please do what you need to do in order to feel as good as it's possible to feel, depending on how you are in this kind of space. Is my sound okay in the back? And is my pace of speech okay for anyone who's doing translation or suffering through an English-only situation? It's okay? All right. If any of that changes, or if you notice something and you need us to address it, please put your hand up. And if I don't notice, say Alexis, then I will notice you. Okay. So what I'm sharing tonight, I'm so happy to share with you. I, several years ago, started going through a kind of profound existential and spiritual crisis. And I felt that I did not know how to go on in the world as it is right now. And I specifically had lost the mooring of how I had been doing that. And I was really bereft and surprised to be bereft, because I am normally a very holding it together kind of person. And so I did what any person would do, which was to immediately go and read a lot of science fiction and find salvation in Ursula K. Le Guin. And so then, also as any normal person would do, I wrote a book about why Ursula K. Le Guin's anarchism is so great. The book is called No Higher Purpose. It's not out yet. It's about what happens if we don't think that we need to get meaning in our life from the idea that the universe has a specific plan for us, or that there's a God holding everything together, or that we need to be involved in a social hierarchy that gives us a place that tells us that we're better than other people. So that's the no gods and no masters. Le Guin also is someone who has a really strong account in her anarchist work of the idea that we do not have any particular human nature. And this is moving in a particularly interesting way in the history of anarchist thinking globally, where, of course, authoritarians and capitalists think that our nature is fundamentally selfish, aggressive, in deep, continual desire for domination. That's the story they tell about our human nature. And some anarchists have countered that story by saying, no, people are fundamentally good. They are caring, and they share. And I love deeply many of these anarchists. This is the tradition that I come out of anarchist communism from Kropotkin and others. And I'm happy to talk more about the technical details of this. But as I've been working with Le Guin's anarchism in particular, her refusal of human nature is very interesting. And I think she's part of a tendency in anarchist thought that says what it is to be human is to have no nature in particular. It's to have a relation of the capacity to decide what we're going to be in the history that we inherit, the unjust history that we inherit, that we have the possibility to practice freedom there. And so when she refuses a nature narrative about why we're so great, it's because she feels that we are so free. And I found this very helpful, personally. And the final thing that her anarchism does is help articulate an account of the possibility that we also are not determined by our nurture. So that if we've been horribly damaged by this world, which most of us have, if we've been abused, if we've been violated, some of the narratives are that we will then always go on to abuse and violate other people. And of course, all of us live right now in histories of incredible violence, incredible horror. And so that narrative, that the nature, the nurture, the social world that we're in is going to dictate who we're going to be, also is a dead end for us, on Le Guin's view. And instead, she has a beautiful conception of the idea that we collectively, together, can write different stories, that we can have splendid lives and a way forward in this world that doesn't end in immiseration for some, immiseration for many and profit and life for some. So, no gods, no masters, no nature, no nurture. So those are the 4 chapters of the book. And then there's this chapter, the one that I'm sharing with you tonight, which is about ongoingness and the idea that we have only means, that we have only the way that we do things as our political home. And as I've been here in Berlin this last week, one of the things I've been hearing a lot about, which really resonates with me in my organizing contexts in North America, which have been mostly in the California Bay Area, and then in the place where I live now, Ottawa. One of the things that I've heard a lot about here is a kind of fracturing and schisming of the left in Berlin. And I was saying to Killian earlier that I wasn't sure that I had anything to offer to that, right? It felt a little scary to try to say something that might be helpful here about that. And so I wanted to just sort of be honest that one of the things I'm offering is the best that I've been able to find for thinking about resisting sectarianism and schisms on the left is in this idea that we could behave as though we are never going to stop organizing with each other. We're never going to actually stop organizing, and that this is a good thing. Is everyone okay for me to say just like 5 minutes about what I mean by this? Are you doing okay? Okay. So, in this chapter, which you're welcome to read all of, but maybe don't share too far because it's really still just a draft. I start from this work in prison abolition, which is orientation toward the idea that there is a forever moving horizon, that we will never fundamentally finish the work that we're doing. There are 2 novels that Le Guin uses understanding of ongoingness to help us think about that idea of the horizon ever moving and us walking toward it, which you might recognize from the Zapatistas in Chiapas, right? We make the road while walking, and we're creating worlds in which many worlds can live. So in her anarchist novel, The Dispossessed, which how many people have read The Dispossessed? Yeah, okay. So there's this part where, it's such an interesting novel, eh? Like, one of the things about it is that it's told in this helical structure. It winds around itself. So it's doing a model in the very structure of the book of kind of spiraling, which is one of Le Guin's main figures, that you move around and around and you do transform. You don't end up in the same place, but you see where you've been over and over again. So the question of time is very complicated in the book, and there's a continual reflection on what it means to have a living society as something that does not end, that continues. So one of the main characters in the book, who's a biologist, Takver, is looking at the other sort of central protagonist character, Shevik, and in conversation, if anyone wants to hear also criticisms of Le Guin around her monogamy-centric, heterocentric orientation in this book, I would be happy to tell you this. One of the things that I really am trying to do in this work, and that I want all of us to do when we find a site of salvation the way that I have with Le Guin, is to never sanctify that site of salvation, to let the people that we love and learn from be fucked up and imperfect and have done things wrong, right? So I have a passionate devotion also to Octavia Butler, but one of the things I really worry about is the sense in which sometimes people tend to deify her or make her a prophet. And so it's important to me that Le Guin is really generative as a thinker, but not perfect. And I want this partially because of the things that I'm trying to argue here, which is none of us are perfect. All of us are ordinary. All of us are fucked up. Therefore, we have to take that as the basis from which we do anything. And if we think ordinary people are the people who have transformed this world over and over again, and we are ordinary people, then we too can transform this world without having to be perfect, without having to have it all right. So anyway, back to the book. Takfur and Shevek. Takfur is looking at Shevek, and she thinks, for she too was an Adonian, so an anarchist in Le Guin's mode. And the separation of means and ends was, to her too, false. For her, as for Shevek, there was no end. There was process. Process was all. You could go in a promising direction, or you could go wrong, but you did not set out with the expectation of ever stopping anywhere. So this is the idea that when we're organizing, when we're doing political work, we set out in a direction. We have a goal, right? We have something that we're moving toward. But there's not a point after which we've hit that goal and then everything's over. So there's no eschatology, right? There's no point where you're dead and you look back and Anubis in the Egyptian tradition, or who is it in the Christian tradition? Sums up your life. Anubis weighs your heart on a scale. There's no point like that in our organizing work. I learned this really from an oral history project that I did with AIDS activists in the Canadian context, where people would talk about these incredible struggles that they did over years. And there was one in particular where they won this major battle to transform a key piece of legislation to keep people alive and to get them medication. And they got news that they'd won this fight on a Thursday. And I was talking to one of these activists and I said, and then what did you do? And he said, well, Mondays were our normal weekly meetings, so we got together on Monday and we figured out what we would need to do next to get people's medication paid for now that they had access for it. So it was just an ordinary part of their organizing life that they won something, and then they still had their meeting on Monday to figure out what the next struggle was going to be. There was that same interview, they lost a major thing, and I said, and what did you do after you heard about that? And he said, well, I think we heard about it was a Saturday, and so we went out to the bars and we were flyering everyone to tell them to come to the meeting on Monday so we could talk about what to do next. So this idea of ongoingness, that we're never done with the work, is partially this idea that whether we win or lose, that win or loss is just the terrain of struggle that the next thing we're doing is going to be happening on. So how many people, when I say this, feel exhausted? Angela Davis was one of my teachers in grad school, and she always says, freedom is a constant struggle. And I used to think that when she said that, it was tiring. But this is the second point I want to make about ongoingness. If you think that freedom is a constant struggle means, and you're exhausted all the time, you need this second thing, which is about the unity of means and ends. So there's this part in the novel The Lathe of Heaven where one of the characters says, the ends justify the means. But what if there never is an end? All we have is means. So in the anarchist tradition, this is the idea of prefiguration. It's the idea that we practice in the present the world that we want to create for the future. And we never say, we're going to do shitty things to each other now in order to have a good world later. We say, if we want to have a social space where people can practice horizontal relations of decision-making, co-creating spaces in which people can be human together and take care of each other, we're not going to start by having a capitalist cafe where we pay people below minimum wage and they get tips if they're really hot. We say, let's make a casino for social medicine. And let's just start now doing that world. And it's not like having a casino for social medicine in Berlin means that the revolution has happened and we're done, we're going to go home. It means that in the present, you're practicing the kinds of relations that you want to have forever. So if we say, imagine that freedom as a constant struggle wasn't as an exhausting thing. Imagine that every win or loss is the terrain of struggle for the next win or loss. What would that mean if it wasn't tiring? How would we have to be with each other so that when we come into spaces together, we treat each other well, we treat ourselves well, we do not accept the idea that we're going to burn out in order to make a particular win. We do not accept that we should treat each other or ourselves badly in order to win a political struggle. We actually say we want our movement spaces to be spaces where we leave more alive and connected than we came in. If we really take seriously the idea that we're never gonna not be with each other, we begin to treat each other differently. But part of this also, in my experience organizing, is getting more real about the idea that if this is really the world that we're in with each other, there's a higher stakes for what behavior we'll accept. So starting to organize in this way in my life has been also the reason that I have more direct conversations with people where I say, your behavior is not acceptable, and I am not going to organize with you. So when I think of ongoingness as a political orientation, as a bulwark against sectarianism and schisming on the left, it's significantly around this idea that we should expect the best from each other and find ways to build relations of responsibility and care, where that sometimes includes saying, you raped someone, and so you're not welcome in this space. Ongoingness for me has actually required more honesty and willingness to tell the truth and be blunt and explicit than feeling like I can just tolerate this for a little bit because soon it'll be over. That was long, so I'll stop and invite you.
Thank you. That was perfect line. I have so many questions, including the one about, I want to hear the criticism about heteronormative monogamy. But I think I will choose a different one. You mentioned that there is this idea that like kind of self-determination is at the core of this is where we are going, this is our goal, this is the freedom, this is the thing that we seek. And yesterday in the writing workshop we talked about that our organizing, the goal of our organizing should be to all become the weirdest version of ourselves that we possibly can. I love that. I'm trying. And at the same time, I think in the Dispossessed and other places of like when there is a lot about kind of shedding our individualism, right? That the society that comes out in her anarchism is nearly, it is not authoritarian, but it might feel like that to us. So I wonder what that, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, one of the things that's so great about The Dispossessed is that it's set 200 years after the revolution. And so the questions that it's asking, like its subtitle is an ambiguous utopia. And if you like The Dispossessed, the other book really to read is this book called Always Coming Home, which is a super weird ethnography of the future, which is more like a pluritopia. It's a many-placed book. Le Guin said that she always was kind of frustrated that people only read The Dispossessed as her anarchist book, and she said that she felt like Always Coming Home was really her anarchist book because it was a pluritopia where lots of different worlds are happening. But the thing that's neat about The Dispossessed is that you just look at it and you're like, yeah, if we won tomorrow, all of these things would be the problems, right? So if you have an anarchist world, an anarchist moon, then one of the things that happens is that the people who are proprietarians of the soul, right, who want to take other people's ideas and hoard them, the people who are like process nerds, like they end up being more and more intense. So all of the things that happen in small anarchist groups are happening. She's figuring them. And the crux of the novel really is about this question of how social sanction can come to serve the same function as authoritarianism. So that's what's interesting about it. It's imperfect. And the narrative tension of the novel is, what if you have a group of people within an anarchist society who are wanting it to be continually transforming, wanting it to be a continuous revolution? And the way that Le Guin organizes that is exactly through this idea, which in the book is called the cellular function, but it shows up in a lot of her other work too. And this is the idea that comes from a particular strand of individualist anarchism, that we should be free to be absolutely the weirdest possible versions of ourselves. And that the purpose of society is to create the conditions under which us offering the best of ourselves, which is the specific, unique thing that no one else is like, is most facilitated. So that we don't expect the liver to do the work of the brain. And instead we want each person to be doing their own thing. If you are interested in that, there's a book called Resist Everything Except Temptation, which goes through Oscar Wilde's individualist anarchism. The bad thing that happens in individualist anarchism, as it's like classically constituted through people like Max Steiner, and indeed through Oscar Wilde, who turns out was super racist. And this is like a hidden history that Christian Williams in this book about Wilde's really interesting anarchism doesn't take seriously. Wilde's like overtly supported the US South and said that it was like Ireland. So he's a really complicated character, and this is again one of these things where I want us to be like, let's let our people that we appreciate also have real problems, you know? So for Le Guin, it's really important that that possibility of being unique and individual is always only based in the possibility of relationality, of being with others, so that it's never going against. We find that space, she thinks, through relations. Like we find our possibility for being weird, partially because other people help us manifest it, and we help them manifest it. So it's like the deeply social account of individuality.
Yes. Thank you. I have one last question, and then we'll open into the Q&A. Is everyone's butt kind of okay? Yeah? Okay. I was wondering if you have a story for us, if you can tell us about a person that is kind of like an on the earth, like an anarchist, or a project that you feel like really came close to what she describes.
So this is so grounded in wherever we are. For me, in the Canadian context, some of the people that I know who are doing this are mostly Indigenous land defenders. So they are in various like collective, democratically oriented spaces, really practicing this possibility that we can start from wherever we are in the actual history that we inherit and create a different mode of life that doesn't replicate the patterns of domination that have come to us hitherto. Um, when I lived in Northern Ontario, in Sudbury, Ontario, I worked with the Indigenous nation that was the traditional custodians of that territory in Atigmashing, Anishinaabeg. And I was teaching a class about Canadian settler colonialism, and I had 2 older Indigenous women students in that class. And the white settler students were really, many of them had never learned these things before. It was, this was in like 2008, so it was before some of the history of residential schooling, which was very well known by Indigenous people, but which a lot of white people had been able to not know, not understand, not learn about. A lot of my students were really having a kind of very intense fear reaction as they learned the genocidal implications of their inheritances and what Canada had done to Indigenous people. And we had this very intense conversation in the classroom where one student said, I don't even know where my family is from, and if we really decolonize and we get sent back to Europe, like I don't even know where I would go. And one of the older Indigenous women students, she's like 62, Barb, she said, "Why do you think we would send you back?" And the student, just like was in this moment of real like honesty and directness, was like, "Well, we Canada, I'm Canadian, we stole your children and murdered them in residential schools." And Barb said, "Why would you think that would make us want to do that to you? We would want to live in this place in a different way." And I think about that a lot. What it means to think about transformation being different than reversal when we're thinking about decolonization and going on from what we actually, like taking seriously what we actually have inherited and doing something otherwise. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think I'll open it. Okay. We'll open for Q&As. We're gonna take like 20 minutes for them, and then we'll be hanging out and listening to whatever I pick. So there will be more chances to talk to Alexis. And but I was wondering if you talk to the person next to you. So what I would like to do now is, we will take 1 minute exactly, and if you can think of either a question or a thing that resonated with you from the talk. There might have been a lot, but try to pick one. And maybe write it down. The minute starts now. We have 30 seconds left. Now it's time for introspection. You will talk to your neighbors in 20 seconds. Yeah. People here behave like anarchists. Really weird. All right. Now that you have your one question, I would love for you to find a neighbor that sits next to you and tell them the thing that resonated with you the most, or the question that you have. And they will tell you your thing. And you can have a tiny conversation, and we will have take just 2 minutes out of that. And after that, if you feel like your little couple of throuple came up with the most brilliant thing, we can share them. Okay, timer is on. Please talk to each other now.
I know Alexis very well, so
So it's just kind of like, and now, like what's happening in this chapter? What's happening is that you're going through it, right? Think about this, what you're talking about. I think
yeah, I think there's a danger of creating a repressive positivity bias. We have to have great lacking oxygen or something.
Right. Thank you for talking. Now we're gonna calm down again, slowly, from talking to each other.
We don't have the most interesting question.
This is like I am gonna thank you so much. I am gonna calm us down because I love ending on time, because then there is more time after that, and we are gonna end at 9:30. It's gonna happen no matter what. Amazing. Okay. We will have probably time for 3 questions, is my assumption, maybe more. Does anyone have a question that they would love to share and ask Alexis?
I will try to find a way to formulate this. I just want to preface it with I was very, very struck by what you're talking about with the Anishinaabe community, because I'm Anishinaabe actually. So that was it. Sort of brought things into perspective to me immediately. For what you were talking about with collective organizing, and brought up a lot of thoughts about collective memory and collective knowledge and ancestral knowledge of organizing, and I hadn't put it in the perspective of that like and the sort of duration with which like indigenous people, but all of us through our ancestral memory have, that is much older than us and will continue past us. And I guess like, I don't know what my question is, but like, do you have thoughts about sort of like this ongoingness of organizing together and how this has happened in the past through our ancestral memory or something like this.
So one of the things that I think we can really think about is the way that we have different ancestral memories. Sometimes internally, each individual person has different layers and accretions of ancestral memory that is also includes layers of oppression and layers of liberation. And one of the things that I have been working on in a different book, which is called Only with Others, which is going to be published, but it's also not out yet, is this question of what it means to claim our bad kin. So in North America, there's a common formulation because there's a lot of people who want to claim indigenous identity because they have like a great grandmother, and they're like, oh, she was Cherokee and therefore I'm indigenous. So this is a form of identity theft that's very common in North America. And in many indigenous spaces, the way that they talk about this is to say, it doesn't actually matter what you claim about yourself, it matters who claims you. So who says you are part of my people or of my struggle, you're part of my descendants. And so that's a relationship instead of a biological identity or something. I've thought about that a lot, but I work on whiteness, and so at the time that I was thinking about this, I was organizing against the Proud Boys in Ottawa, who are a white supremacist, ethno-nationalist formation. And I really was thinking about who claims me. And I thought, Nazis claim me, actually. They're trying to build a world of whiteness that benefits me. So what happens if I claim them in opposition to them, right? I say, because you are working to promulgate white supremacy, you are my enemy. Contingent, right? Not forever, but because of this action that you're doing. So when I think about like what our inheritances are, I think it's important for us to think of where we're situated and what we're inheriting materially in an ongoing way that we can orient toward in relations of taking in, right? Like lifting up. I can lift up lots of the people in my particular heritage, both lineal and political, who resisted, and that's very important. And I can also take seriously the people who massively benefited from and promulgated oppression, and that's very important. And for me, what that helps me do is to think about how those different inheritances and different forms of claiming are sites for resisting, collectively resisting the depredations of the present. So the specific things that I think we can look at is where in our history, where in what we inherit, do we find the places where people basically believe that the world is going to end, and they're good with that, right? So this is like massively global capitalists are invested in the idea of apocalypse. They believe that the world is ending and we should just strip mine it as fast as possible, and maybe some of them will go to Mars. So when I say that we can be invested in this idea of ongoingness, it's about resisting that apocalyptic vision and the idea that, oh, it's so sad, we're just gonna have to destroy this place. We can't do anything, and maybe we'll just keep a little enclave, right, of heavily defended borders. So when we say ongoingness, it's opposing that through this approach of being in an ecosystem that's alive and that believes that life should continue.
Do you want to shout?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if this is formulated yet as a question as much as a curiosity to hear you speak more to this thing that you said. But I'm really curious how this. I'm loving and resonating a lot with the concept of ongoingness, and also really believe in prefigurative politics. But there was a tension that came up for me around this like when you were talking about if someone is really harmed or something, and drawing this line and being like, you can't be here, and I don't have an answer to this, but like it was hard for me to make both of those things meet inside of me. And I'm really interested in this tension in my own life and in like leftist spaces, and I was curious if you could speak more to how those blend together for you.
Thank you for that question. Did everyone hear it? So the question is, there's a tension in saying we want to have a prefigurative practice where we relate with everyone as though they are not disposable, that no one is a means to an end. And I said, and there are times where we're going to say, you raped someone and you're not welcome in this social movement space. Does that capture it? Yeah. So this came out of I'm in a collective called Punch Up Collective. We're a small anarchist collective. We've been around for 11 years, which sadly is longer than pretty much any group in Ottawa. And as a result of that, people know us, and so they come to us when fucked up things happen in the scene. And we have now a list of activists who have violated each other's boundaries in various ways. And people have asked various things of us. And we're really small. We don't have capacity to be a transformative justice collective, and it's not our strength. So we've had to really think about what are we doing when we receive these. And sometimes people say, I just want someone to know that this person did this to me. Or sometimes they say, I want someone to know, and I want to know that if I come to a punch-up event, the person who raped me won't be there. But I don't want you to tell them that I'm the one who told you. So it can get really complicated. And what I've come to, is that actually being direct with people and finding partial ways. Sometimes we think what it means to be prefigurative and what it means to not relate to anyone as disposable is that the people who've harmed each other are never written off. We never say, you're trash, we exile you, we shun you. For me, actually saying, you did this, and this is why you're not welcome in this space, is part of relating to people as not disposable. When I've done this with people in formal processes or just in personal relationship, it's because I believe that the behavior that they did that profoundly harmed someone is not their entire nature. And part of what I'm doing in saying, I'm not going to organize with you, is speaking to my belief that they could be otherwise. So I think of both the actual holding people in relations of responsibility who have massively hurt others and making spaces where sometimes they're not welcome as part of the prefigurative practice of saying, after the revolution, we're still going to hurt each other. How are we going to deal with that? So that's one part. But also out of this work in Ottawa, my collective really came to this feeling like we actually don't want to keep having over and over again just better ways to deal after someone's raped someone. We want to prevent harm. And we don't want to just prevent sexual assault. We want to prevent people burning each other out, people, working so hard in movement spaces that they actually have breakdowns, and then, so we're working now with this model of infrastructure as harm prevention, where we are really actively working on looking at what happens when that person who's an older activist pursues new young people and dates them and then violates their boundaries. What would it mean for us to have organizing spaces where that doesn't happen? That means that guy needs to not be the main repository of institutional knowledge who has a lot of social capital. How would we do that? So, we train people, we rotate roles, we set up. So it's finding the prevention work is the prefiguration. So we're like planarchists, right? We're really interested in process and method. And in my little collective, we were interviewed by some of the more insurrectionists in our area. And they were like, so you're just 4 people, you have meetings, what happens in the meetings? And we're like, well, we have a facilitator, and we have a timekeeper, and we have a task person. And they like blinked, and they were like, you have 4 people, and that was 3 roles. What does the 4th person do? Like, it was a joke. And we were like, oh, they're the active participant. So, I don't know that all of you need to do that, but I like it.
More questions? Yeah. Who has a brilliant question?
Who has a bad question?
I have a bad question, actually.
You have a bad question?
Yeah.
Do you want to make that?
I would say that the bad question is, do you think there are ever situations in which prefiguration is not the best strategy?
So the question, did everyone hear it? Yeah, got it. I would say for me, I love prefiguration so much, but then every time you love something, you also have to be like, oh, what's wrong with this love? What's wrong with this love? And so for me, the tension in prefiguration is, I'm so interested in the idea that we have to create worlds that we cannot predict. We do not know what the world to come will look like. So the thing that's so fascinating about the idea of prefiguration is you're creating a world in which social relations of oppression and benefit aren't organizing everything that we do, but we live in this world in which social relations of oppression and benefit do. So we're necessarily trying to practice a world, and we have no idea what that world will be like. And I love it that anarchists of the past said, we have to shape this world and also become the kinds of people who can live in it, and we cannot predict what that's going to be. So that's where prefiguration can't be that we know what it's going to be. There's one more question, and you've had your hand up a couple of times, so let's do it. Can we?
So I guess going to that point in time, thank you so much for this. So in the context of prefiguration, how does that then resonate with ideas from like Jose Munoz, so like Pushing Utopia, and what you mentioned of other activist and world-making processes?
Yeah.
And how then they would be recuperated using like situationist language, recuperated by capitalism, and then used in a way to further oppress us as we come to further alienate ourselves into an identity.
Yeah.
And then that world is no longer has its teeth to actually fight the oppressive networks that we're trying to fight. How would we go about that? Or how would you fit that into this prefiguration model? And I'm thinking of like forget his last name, like Professor Martin, he wrote Around the Day in 80 Worlds, and talks about another article about how we have to grieve the end of this world-making process and move towards something that can have a type of imaginary similar to like the Zapatistas, with like create a world in which many worlds can exist, but to do that you first need to grieve this. And how does that fit within the other discussion about the continuation of this world-making process? What about it can we leave behind and grieve, or must we take everything with us?
Yeah, I'm really glad I took such an easy question just to close this out. So I'm not going to try to sum that up in the microphone, but I think one of the beautiful things that you're asking there is, when we're in this world and we need to do away with some of it and also not allow our responses to be endlessly recapitulated and sold back to us as resistance. One tendency, one way that we could do that is through simply disidentifying, in Munoz's words, right? We're just going to say no. And then the other approach is following the Zapatistas, as you indicated, right? That we say no, we have one no, and we have many, many yeses. So I'm really interested in the many yeses part. And I do think that grieving and building can happen at the same time. Some of the time I'm worried about simply grieving as something that shuts down that reduces us to the thing that has already happened, and that doesn't allow us to spark this possibility of something surprising us. But I basically have this feeling like when we're doing it's really about asking, you know, where we are in the actual life that we live. How are we going to make a connection to something that moves in a direction that we can follow, that moves in a direction toward life? So for some of us, that's going to be grieving in that way, or it's going to be disidentifying. And for others, it's going to be finding sources of resonance in particular ancestral proliferation, right? Or resonance. So I think for me, as we're thinking with the places where we find sparkiness or a sense that we could continue, the thing I'm really interested in is how do we sort of fan that flame in a really specific way that's personal and that's felt and that allows us access to connectivity, which is where politics happens. So I think this is going to be kind of a question of, yeah, where are we feeling connected and alive? And I think it's going to vary. But we can talk more one-on-one. Yeah, complicated. Thank you.
Thank you. We are 3 minutes out of 9:30. This is going great. No, 3 minutes before. This is my English. We are doing great. I'm gonna close us out, and then you all can go pee in our 3 bathrooms. Good luck. If you would like, you can close your eyes. This is gonna be very short, and it's kind of a version of a land acknowledgement written by Tina Monroe for the Hologram Project. And also, if you have a friend next to you, at one point you might want to touch them if you think you can. That's, you know, an appropriate thing to do. There are a few sure things about life. There are 3 actually. 1, we die. I have a best 40 summers left to see mountains, to touch dirt, to swim naked, always only naked. You're precious because of your summers. We need you because of your summers. You're wanted, and you're here. 2nd, we are connected to each other. Our lives alone don't make sense. I used to hate that I wasn't able to remain cool in the face of other people's suffering. Now I know it's a gift. I get grumpy when the weather is extreme. I hear the people in Palestine calling us in. Their bones are getting rattled. They're being killed. Let it move your bones. 3rd, we are part of the earth. You can touch the floor now. Feel the land. The swamp that Berlin is built on. The dinosaur bones way down below. The generations who took care of this land. The rubble from the war used to build hills. The people in the city who sleep directly on the earth every night. You can touch the person next to you. Feel them. They are also land. Touch them as a land acknowledgement. You can open your eyes now. Thank you for being here with us.